My hiking gear weighs 3.1 kgs and fits inside a 22-litre pack. I'm going to share with you 30 tips that I've used to lighten my pack. And most of them are free. Before I jump into these tips, I just want to say that having an ultralight setup isn't for everyone. Saving weight is great, but if it makes your adventures not as enjoyable, then maybe it's not worth it. We all have different ideas of fun and objectives that we want to achieve from our time in the mountains. What works for me may not work for you. I have an ultralight setup because it allows me to move quicker and cover more distance without putting as much strain on my body. But those might not be the kind of trips you want to go on. Test out these tips for yourself and see what works for you. At the end of the day, as long as you are happy to carry it, who cares how much your pack weighs? Okay, let's jump into the tips. Tip number 1, weigh everything. Make a list of all the items you're planning on putting in your pack and weigh them individually. Make a list or a spreadsheet or use a website like Lighten to lay out all your gear and get an idea of how much everything weighs. This will allow you to identify heavier items and what's taking up a lot of weight in your pack. Tip number 2, plan your water carries. Water is heavy. It's an essential we all need, but it does weigh a lot. When you're planning a trip, take note of all the water supplies along the route. Adjust how much you plan on carrying according to how many water supplies there are along your route. If it's a super dry stretch, you're obviously going to have to carry more water, which means more weight. If there's plenty of water along the route, then you don't need to carry as much. Planning out your water carries ahead of time can save you a lot of weight on your trip. Close-hole foam mats are great. Although bulkier and maybe not as warm as their inflatable counterparts, they are nearly indestructible and don't get punctures. If you're carrying a foam mat, then consider cutting it in half. My foam mat runs from my shoulders down to my waist. It's only torso length. For most 3-season trips, this is all I need. Although it's not the comfiest, it does save me a lot of weight and reduces the bulk as well. If you use hiking poles, then consider getting a shelter that uses them as the structure. This will save you weight as you won't be carrying extra poles for your tent. There are plenty of options for tents and shelters that utilize hiking poles, although these types of shelters have their pros and cons. I'm personally a big fan of them as they save me on weight and I don't have to be carrying extra poles as I'm already carrying them in my hand. There are a lot of lightweight tents on the market, but if you want to save even more weight, then consider trying a tarp. They can provide more or less protection depending on where and how they're set up, but they pack down a lot smaller and they weigh a lot less. I've been using a tarp for years and I absolutely love it. Pack liners are a great option for keeping your gear dry. But instead of using a heavy dry bag inside your pack, consider using a standard bin bag. They're a lot lighter. Sure, they're probably not as durable, but I can get quite a lot of use out of one bin bag. If you are tarp camping, you might find you want a bit more protection underneath you. A ground sheet is a great option for this, but instead of carrying a ground sheet just for that purpose, use the pack liner in your bag and even use your pack to protect you from the ground. If you're in the market for a new pack, consider getting a frameless one. Although not as good for carrying heavier loads, if you get your base weight light enough, a frameless pack can be a very comfortable option and shave off a lot of weight from your base weight. If you don't need a new pack, you can also just remove the frame from your current bag. Reduce your first aid kit. You don't need to be carrying a full hospital while you're out in the backcountry. Personally, I only carry some plasters, some ibuprofen, repair tape, and maybe a sewing needle and dental floss. Not much. If those items can't fix any injury that I have in the backcountry, chances are I'm hitting the SOS on my inReach. Personally, I always carry a power bank when I'm out on the trail. This is so I can charge my phone and any other electronics I have. I always try to make sure my electronics are all rechargeable. If I'm carrying a power bank, I don't also want to be carrying spare batteries as well. Pick one or the other. And since my phone can't run on AAAs, I'll always pick the power bank. Although this is something I always wrestle with, disposable plastic bottles are a lot lighter than a Nalgene or some other kind of reusable water bottle. I can actually get quite a lot of life out of a standard plastic bottle. Although it's not my favorite thing to use, it does save me a lot of weight. Now this one's definitely not for everyone, and some people might just think you're straight up psychotic, but instead of carrying a stove with you on your next trip, consider giving cold soaking a go. If you don't know what cold soaking is, it's just rehydrating foods using cold water. It obviously takes longer and you get a cold meal at the end of it, but you don't have to carry a stove, gas, a lighter, a metal pot. All you need is some sort of plastic container like a peanut butter jar and you're away. You'd be surprised at how much your food packaging weighs. Getting rid of any excess packaging can actually save you a lot of weight. Removing any cardboard or extra wrappers that you don't need for your food, although it's only grams, can add up into a lot of weight. You don't need to carry an extra set of clothes. When I'm out hiking and backpacking, I have the pair of shorts I'm wearing, the top I'm wearing, and that's it. I've got one spare pair of socks and my insulating layers that I need for my trip. I'm not carrying a spare pair of sleeping clothes, and I'm definitely not carrying a change of clothes to hike in the next day. Yes, you're going to be smelly, but that's part of the fun. Being a bit smelly never hurt anyone. Now this tip might be getting a little bit extreme, and I wouldn't do it without careful consideration, but consider removing or cutting off any excess straps or webbing or any sort of fabric that you don't need. Get rid of any labels or tags or shorten any straps that don't need to be as long as they are. This isn't going to save you a ton of weight, but you'd be surprised how much those excess straps can add up to. If you enjoy tinkering, then give modifying your gear a go. A classic example is replacing the headband strap on your head torch. You can make one out of shock cord relatively easily and will save you quite a few grams. Go through your gear and see what else you might be able to modify. For example, can you replace the guy line cord on your tents for something lighter? Using a map and compass is an essential skill when you're out in the backcountry. In this modern age, our phones have GPS built in, and you can download topo maps for the area that you want to explore. Now I know there's going to be some die-hard purists out there that don't want to rely on this, but instead of bringing a map and a compass on your next trip, consider using your phone for navigation. Chances are you've already got it on you, so why not use it for another purpose aside from just taking photos? Use shorter charging cables. That's the whole tip. Instead of bringing unnecessarily long charging cables to charge your electronics, try bringing shorter ones. Obviously super short ones can be a little bit impractical. Find a nice middle ground so that they're still usable. Ideally make all your electronics use USB-C so that you only have to carry one charging cable, but that's not always possible. I don't like to bring sunscreen on my trips. Not only is it heavy, but I also don't like to apply it all the time, especially when my body's covered in sweat and dirt. It's just not nice. To get around that, I use a Sun Hoodie. Sun Hoodie is just a long sleeve shirt with a hood on it. It's rated to ideally UPF 50+. I've never been burnt in mine, and I absolutely love it as a piece of kit. It comes on all my trips. The same goes for bug spray. Liquids are heavy, and I don't like to have to apply it all the time. To get around that, I carry a bug net with me. Especially when I'm tarp camping, I don't have the same protection as in a tent. I jump in my sleeping bag, throw a bug net on my head, and we're good to go. When it comes to any sort of those consumable items, from sunscreen to bug spray to toothpaste, it's a good idea to try carry the smallest amount possible that you're going to need for the trip. Either buy a small tube or put it into something smaller. When it comes to toothpaste, I normally carry a small tube of toothpaste. I'm also going to be implementing into my kit toothpaste tabs. Personally, I think these are a better option as I don't have to carry a whole tube of toothpaste and I only need to carry the number of toothpaste tabs that I need for the trip. I touched on not bringing spare clothes earlier. The same goes for underwear. In fact, I don't even bring underwear at all. My Nike trail shorts have a built-in liner in them. Personally, I find these help to prevent chafing and they feel a lot more comfortable, especially when I'm doing a big amount of kilometers in a day. An item that people seem to bring a lot of are socks. Personally, I only ever carry one spare pair of socks. All you really need are the socks that you're hiking with and a pair of clean socks to put on at night. Personally, I love putting on a clean pair of socks at night. If it's a really long trip, I might bring a third pair of socks. That way I can change those out for the ones I'm wearing during the day and give the other ones a bit of a wash. But otherwise, normally, it's just the pair of socks that I'm wearing and my pair of camp socks. That's it. I don't need 5 different pairs of socks for 5 different days. When you're planning your trip, look at the weather. look at the forecast, look at if there's going to be a lot of rain, if it's going to snow, if it's going to be windy, and also particularly what the temperatures are. In summer, I can get away with a lot less than I could if it was shoulder seasons. That's because the temperatures are warmer and there's probably less chance of rain and bad weather. Great places to save weight here are your sleeping bag. You're not going to need as warm of a sleeping bag in summer, nor are you going to need as many layers. So, next time you're planning your trip, have a look at the weather. For those dry stretches of terrain when you need to carry more water, I like to use the pouch that comes with my water filter. I'm already carrying it, and it saves me bringing an additional bladder, bottle, or water pouch to store more water in. I just fill up my water filter pouch and filter it out as I need it. You don't need spare items or double ups. One head torch, one knife, one spoon. Chances are if you lose or break an item, you can still finish your trip, or you can get by just enough until you can replace it. Leave your wallet and keys out of your pack. You probably don't need your heavy wallet with 20 different cards in it, and you definitely don't need all your keys either. Sure, you might want to bring your key for your car so you can get back in it at the end of the trip, but leave the rest locked inside. They don't need to be in your pack. Although you don't need your whole wallet, a form of ID is always a good idea. It helps search and rescue identify you if something goes wrong. Choose your food wisely. You don't need to be bringing heavy cans or any food with lots of liquid in it. That's just going to weigh you down and make your pack heavier. Choose light food. Freeze-dried meals can be a good option, or make your own at home. Your food should be as nutritionally dense as possible without being super heavy. So do some research and choose wisely. Also bring things that you like, within reason. We're not out here to suffer. Well, some of us are. You don't need a big knife, axe, or saw. Although they're fun to use, when we're out hiking, we're not trying to live off the land. For most hiking trips, you can easily get by with a tiny little pocket knife. Leave the Rambo survival knife at home. And my last tip to share with you all is get rid of your stuff sacks. Sure, it can make organizing your pack easy. It's great to have everything nicely compartmentalized in your pack. You've got a stuff sack for your cook kit, a stuff sack for your clothes, a stuff sack for your sleeping bag, a stuff sack for your electronics. It adds up very quickly. Instead, just use a big pack liner and throw everything in it. Get rid of your stuff sacks. Well, that's all the tips I've got for you guys today. I've used all of these to lighten my bag, and they've made a big difference to my base weight. I really hope you found this useful. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.